How do you simplify a subject like frequency or energy, or how you connect to the world, or how you attract those things into your life? I feel like by putting a bunch of clips together, I got that. If you stick with it, I give a pretty clear understanding of how everything is kind of connected. Stay tuned.
Now again, this is just a euphemism in your language. This isn't meant to be absolutely literal, but it's the best analogy that can be translated into your language. You understand?
Right.
Well, let us back up, as you say. First of all, your scientists, many of them, now understand that the so-called Big Bang is not necessarily the beginning of everything, it's just the beginning of your particular universe, yes?
Right.
But infinity is infinity. And there are many Big Bangs, as you say, many cycles that occur within infinity. Many universes, what your scientists have come to understand as the multiverse. So really, there are many Big Bangs. But in terms of your particular universe and its so-called beginning, the idea is, again, as an analogy, as an illustration, imagine, if you will, that there is only one particle and nothing else. All right? If you wish to represent this as simply a tiny subatomic particle floating in a big, empty, infinite black void, that's all right. It will do for the purposes of the illustration, even if that's not necessarily literally true.
Right.
So, now imagine that because there is only this one subatomic particle, it has absolutely nothing else to relate to, yes?
Right.
So there really is no gravity, there really is no sense of mass, there's really no sense of space or time. It just exists as a point of pure existence.
Right.
Thus then, it is capable of doing anything and everything imaginable. In other words, it can travel at infinite speed. Nothing holds it back. There are no laws of physics yet. You follow me?
Yes.
Thus, if you understand that that single particle can travel throughout that void, that big infinite void, at infinite speed, then that means that particle can actually appear to be everywhere at once. Yes?
Right.
Thus, it can actually appear to be an infinite number of particles, even though it's actually only one particle.
That makes sense.
That's the Big Bang. Now, the pattern in which it did that, again, as an analogy, similar to the pattern of lines you see on the holotope across the room. The idea is that it will create that infinite speed pathway in a kind of what you would call a geometrically radiating form. Where it doesn't cross its path, it will be simply what you call, well, almost emptiness. Where it starts to cross its own path, it builds up, in a sense, more and more densification and becomes something more akin to what you recognize as energy and then matter. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So, in a sense, the places where it crosses itself the most creates what you understand as the experience you call dense matter, and what you think your universe is made of. But what your scientists are now beginning to explore is the idea that the majority of your universe is made up of dark matter, dark energy that is highly invisible to you.
That's right.
Well, the dark matter and dark energy is where the single particle crosses its own path less. It isn't as dense, but it forms the majority of the material that makes up your physical universe. Because it only crosses itself a very few times in a very dense way to create that small amount of matter, relatively speaking, that creates all the matter you can perceive in your physical reality.
Right.
Understand?
Yes.
And that's also what creates the idea you call gravity and all the forces. In that sense, it is actually interconnected because, in a sense, it's like a web. And it is that web, it is the pathway itself, the geometric path itself, in a sense, that creates that connectivity, the stretchability and malleability that you interpret as the idea of gravitational or electromagnetic or strong or weak nuclear forces.
So the basic concept that he's, or not the basic concept that he's trying to, it's a very complex subject. The subject that he's trying to get across in that is everything is one thing, but moving at infinite speed. So your frame rate that you actually experience, or that you experience your reality to be, is determined by your personal frequency. So the resonance that you experience of time, space, all those things is literally just how fast you're moving. Because the faster you move, the less time you actually experience.
Here's something that I want to open up. So I've become very close friends with a gentleman named Matthias de Stefano. And Matthias de Stefano remembers his past lives. And he remembers one of his past lives in the ancient civilization of Kem, which is post-Diluvian, after the flood. It's an Atlantean kind of Atlantean spot, one of the cultures that was seeded from, the Atlanteans that actually left after the flood. And he remembers that he was part of a guild they had guilds that were related to the elements. And he was part of the water guild. And the water guild was able to actually get into resonance with water and use water to cut these large megalithic stones. And some of the other people in the other elemental guilds were able to get into resonance with the actual stone itself and then sing their own energy as in resonance with the stone higher to make the stones lighter. So the big mystery of how did they move these stones, they were actually able to alter the weight of the stones through magic, through actually forming this sympathetic resonance with the stone itself and then levitate it. And while his clan, his tribe, or his temple, I guess you would say, was able to use water to actually cut the stones. So to get those very straight lines that you can see, it was just a line of water and gravity. And so he talks about this. And I said, well, could this happen in our world now? And really what he was saying is it's unlikely at this point because there's a general field of belief that actually puts a cap on the ability for this to happen, because it's not only, even though he believes because he remembers what he did, the field of belief around it, the collective unconscious, the morphic resonance field, as Sheldrake would say, is actually preventing these kind of large, big displays of magic from actually happening, because the morphic resonance field is just doesn't quite allow it. And now what it seems like is we're seeing like little pokes as we're making like a little progress, like pushing the ceiling up. But his idea is that, we can't do that now yet. And maybe if actually the morphic resonance field, the collective field of belief shifts, then some of these ancient magical practices will become available again.
Yeah, that sounds plausible to me. At one point in the TM world, the Maharishi was asked, well, how come nobody can levitate anymore? We can only hop. And his answer was quite similar to what you just said, that there's a collective sense of what is possible. And so if you're doing something which a lot of people would say that's impossible, there's a certain degree of fear and anxiety underneath that could squash it. And I think this is one of the reasons why especially in the sorcery traditions, that the sorcerer would never say what they're doing. They would never reveal their methods. They'd always do it in secret. And so we've paid attention to that in the kind of work that I do. Whenever we do an experiment, we've done it in our laboratory, and some people know where the laboratory is, but generally we don't advertise it. In addition, the reason why we try to isolate the kinds of experiments that we do from people's knowledge of exactly when and where it is for the reason you just said. We have a lot of people now saying, I don't think I want to believe in that. That becomes the equivalent of a dirty test tube in a biology lab.
Right.
So very quickly and very basically, what he was basically describing in that clip is your beliefs affect your reality, whether it's positive beliefs or negative beliefs. I'm going to share a quick little story I was in a remote viewing group years ago. And what remote viewing realistically does, it teaches you to tap into frequencies more actively. It's like psychic push-ups, pull-ups. It's an exercise just to teach you to actually how to tap into frequency more actively. In this group, we were getting some great results. One time, we had someone who had a belief that this isn't real, that nothing was possible. And we all just couldn't get anything. Like, we had gone for like a good 2 or 3 months going to this group every week. for that time. And the one time we had someone there that's like, this isn't possible, this isn't... We ended up getting nothing. The moment he left, it literally, all the information, everything just flowed right back in. So you have to really pay attention to the beliefs of the people around you, or else it's going to affect the results you get, realistically speaking.
The idea of a negative fear-based belief is that in order for you to continue to perpetuate it, it must also reach into its little bag of tricks and make it seem as if it is not possible to change it. It simply cannot be changed. It simply doesn't have the ability. It simply cannot be changed. It simply doesn't have the ability to be changed. It must be perpetuated by its very unchangeable nature. So it traps you in a vicious circle of knowing that there simply is no way out at all. That the very nature, the very structure of the mechanism says there is no doorway here. It cannot be changed. This is where you live. There is nowhere else to go. This is your entire universe. It is eternal. It cannot change. But it also recognizes that it is fighting against, and I'm going to just use this terminology for now, it is fighting against a perpetual, non-ending, relentless stream of information from the higher mind attempting to reach your core being through this mechanism. Because the higher mind, the positive beliefs, and the higher mind are always sending information, always sending light, always sending guidance to guide you back to your natural self. Always. Within the yin and yang, there is always the opportunity to go in the opposite direction. Within the dark, there is always the doorway that leads to light. Within the light, there is always the doorway that leads to dark. But when you're in the light, you understand that that doorway that leads to the dark is just a choice, and it's only offered to you as an equal choice. But when you're in the dark, the doorway that leads to the light, from the dark's perspective, is something to be avoided at all costs. So even though it cannot actually close that doorway, it will thus then disguise the doorway with an illusion of unchangeability, so that you will not see the doorway, so that the doorway will become invisible to your consciousness, because as we have said, you cannot perceive what you are not the vibration of. When you are in an enlightened state, you can see all choices, even the negative ones, because they are all equal choices from the perspective of the higher mind. But when you are in the lower vibrational state of a negative belief and fear system belief, then the idea is that it must disguise these things that exist as choices to make it seem as if there is no choice at all. So, tapping into the survival mechanism, the first thing it does with that energy is it disguises, it covers up that doorway so that you don't even know you have a choice to go back into the light, because that doorway is always there. And the array of tools it uses to take your attention off that doorway, to make you look in any other direction other than that doorway that leads to the light, are these that are generally described surrounding the mechanism like, in a sense, a viral cell. Like the idea of electrons around the nucleus of an atom. And it will constantly switch back and forth and use these other tools and techniques in a variety of ways, in a variety of combinations, to constantly keep you off balance, to constantly keep you unable to see that doorway that leads to the light. A variety of mechanisms, such as the idea of projection, such as the idea of rejection of ideas, such as the idea of paranoia, so that you will not believe what anyone is saying to you when they are actually attempting to help you, so that you can, in a sense, avoid all information that will actually be to your benefit by seeing it in a light, by projecting it from the dark vibration with a dark energy, so that even the light looks dark to you, and in that sense, seeing everything in a negative light will keep you off balance. The idea thus then of all these things working together will keep you completely off balance until such time as you give yourself the opportunity to recognize that this structure exists. This is where truly the phrase in your language, knowledge is power, comes into play.
So, Pay attention to your core beliefs, whether they are positive or negative. I know from experience that I had a very negative core belief for many years, actually driving my behavior when it came to women or most parts of my life. And it was, it's crazy that I've actually done that exercise a bunch of times over the years, and it's layers upon layers upon layers. Your beliefs carry a charge behind them that actually attract different things into your life. So you got to pay attention to your positive beliefs as well as your negative beliefs, because your negative beliefs will attract things into your life that you say you don't want, but it's there for a purpose. I know for me, for many years, I was attracting things I said I didn't want. But because I had that very negative belief kind of hidden in there, it affected the results that I was getting in life, and also it affected the results and the people that I was attracting in my life, because they mirrored and matched that energy that I was putting out into the world. And now that I'm on the other side of things, I can tell you that once I was able to deal with the negative belief that was causing most of my issues, my life has gotten a lot better.
So the idea thus then of the vibrations of attraction and repulsion have been talked about in your society now in recent times with great fervor and great acceleration, because it is now the recognition that this is a true vibratory principle that you can utilize in your life in a variety of ways. That having been said, many of the concepts, many of the ways in which this has been expressed, all well and good, all germane, all perfect for what they are, have in some ways now orbited around the central idea of how this mechanism actually functions. Many of you have a certain idea that when you talk about the law of attraction, you know that if you order your frequency to a certain level, in a sense, if you pattern yourself in a certain way, you will attract those things that are of similar vibration. And in a sense, that is so. And you know that if you allow yourself to be out of alignment with your true self, you will attract things, in a sense, that are of the vibration of misalignment. And in a sense, that is so. And you know that when you have a vibration that is not compatible with something else, you know that the law of repulsion will come into play, in that those things that exhibit more and more incompatibility, vibrationally speaking, will drift farther, 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 and farther apart from each other until such time as those things that are truly incompatible with one another will simply cease to experience one another, because they will no longer really be sharing any kind of an agreement of the same reality experience. This is the other thing that we have also mentioned about in the crossing of the threshold in 2012, and what we have referred to by analogy as the train station. The idea that you have many tracks and they all go through this station. But after they go through this station, they start to split apart to go to their own individual destinations. And at first, the tracks are still relatively close together after they leave the station. But the longer the train travels, the farther apart it will get from any other train, from any other track. And so it becomes, in a sense, less likely that you'll be capable of shifting from train to train, from track to track, the farther apart the trains and the tracks get. And this is why it is so important now, in this time, to be on the track you really wish to be on. There will be a short amount of time in which you will still be capable of perceiving the other trains, the other tracks, but it will also in time be more and more difficult and less probable that you'll be capable of shifting from one track to another. So it is a good idea to make sure that you've bought a ticket on the appropriate train now that it's leaving the station, while you still have the opportunity to experience what it is you say you prefer to experience. Thus then, this is an analogy of the law of repulsion, in that all these incompatible vibrations will begin to segregate out and push away from everything that is not, in that sense, compatible with it. In this idea shows you that repulsion is just as strong an idea, just as strong a force, if you will, as the idea of attraction. And in that sense, without repulsion, attraction will not find the places in which those things that you are attracting can reside. For you must make room for those things that are you by letting go of those things that are not. Now, herein lies the real profound understanding and the core of this idea of the law of attraction and repulsion. Many of you, because again of the way you've been taught to sort of express yourself, to think, to frame things, to label things, to define things in your physical reality, have this kind of a picture in your head that when you vibrate in a certain way, you are attracting something from somewhere else to here. And that when you, in a sense, release something else, you are releasing it, so to speak, from here to somewhere else. Well, of course, many of you now understand that everything exists right here and now. It's not really coming from anywhere else or going to anywhere else. It is, in a sense, simply being rearranged as a ratio of energy, as a balance of energy, as an equation of energy within the consciousness that you are.
So the belief that I had and I gained from growing up, because I was raised by my mom, was I was afraid of women. I was afraid that I was going to do something stupid. I was afraid that I was going to attract myself into experiences with people. And I was just, frankly, afraid of people. But once I've been able to let go of that fear, that profound fear of women, and I'm a very large man. And I've had a lot of people tell me it's crazy that I have that fear. But when you get it when you're a small child, like those beliefs you get when you're a small child, they have such a hold on you because a lot of times you don't go back and actually look at the beliefs themselves. So it's behoove most people to actually go back and take a moment to actually look at those beliefs and be like, why did I attract this experience into my life? Well, I had this thing that happened when I was a kid, and I never went back to go re-look at that specific experience or that specific actual moment in my life that caused all these problems. Being able to deal with that belief can change your entire life.
But you can still use the analogy of the vibration of attraction and repulsion as you have been doing, and at the same time, we would now like to introduce another way of looking at this, another way of imagining this, another way of picturing this so that you can understand how to let go of any concept of effort or struggle with this idea of attempting to attract and attempting to let go, so that it will help accelerate whatever process you do deem is necessary for you when you plant into this equation this particular variable we are about to introduce. Because you see, this is all about the nature of existence, and you are part of the nature of existence. And in that context, as a part of the nature of existence, there really is no separation between you and existence itself. So the vibrations that we are talking about here of attraction and repulsion, you are really immersed in this energy. It is, in a sense, not separate from you. And because that is so, you can use these principles with the following understanding. I'll just put it to you this way. You are not doing all the work, and you don't have to do all the work in the following way. The things, the ideas, the beliefs, the concepts, the experiences, the opportunities, whatever you wish to call them, that are vibrating in alignment with your true core self are already doing their utmost to be attracted to you. The ideas, the synchronicities, the beliefs, the vibrations, the opportunities, the situations, the circumstances that are not aligned with that core, radiant, signature frequency that is your true self are doing their utmost to get away from you.
As he just said, the things that you actually vibrate with, either your frequency, that core vibration, that the frame rate that you're actually moving at, will always, without fail, be attracted to you. So keep that in mind with when you're actually attracting things into your reality. It's that core vibration, that who you are, that's coming from here, that will be attracted into your reality. So if you don't like how your reality is actually the experience you're having in your reality, you need to look at what you're putting out in the world.
The only reason the things that are attempting to get to you don't get to you is that you're keeping them away. The only reason the things that are attempting to get away from you don't get away from you is you are holding on to them and not letting them go. The energy of the law of attraction is not just you attracting things to you. It's the attraction itself being attracted to you, coming to you, desiring to be part of you because it recognizes the vibration that is your core signature frequency and can, by law, do nothing but be attracted to you. The things that are not you cannot do anything but, by law, attempt to remove themselves from the vibration they are not. This is the law. This is the variation of the third law. What you put out is what you get back. But this is the polarity understanding of that third law. That reality itself, existence itself, creation itself, nature itself is vibrating in these ways, and these vibrations can only align with similar vibrations and must move away from what they are not compatible with, unless and because you have been given the free will and the ability to choose to keep something at bay that is attempting to attract itself to you, or hold on to something tightly that is attempting to escape from you. And so everything we have shared with you about getting in touch with your beliefs, refining your understanding of who and what you are, and defining yourself more clearly has been all about the purpose and the focus of understanding how to let go of things that are already attempting to go away, and how to let things in that are already attempting to find you and connect with you. You are not doing the work in that sense of attracting and repulsing. The attraction principle and the repulsion principles are automatically built into nature. You are only doing the work of letting the things in that want to come in and letting go of the things that want to go. That's the work you're doing. You don't actually have to learn how to attract. You don't actually have to learn how to repel. You just have to learn to let in, and you have to learn to let go. That's all you need to do. Now, doesn't that sound a little more simple?
So holding on to the things inside of you that are negative beliefs or positive beliefs, or the things you say that don't serve you, but you still keep doing, that's how you keep holding on to, you keep that charge, you keep that part of you still keeps reliving those experiences or recreating the experiences moment by moment by moment by moment. But that's really simply put, is the things that don't belong to you, the things that are not you, they're trying to get away from you. So why are you keeping the things that don't want to be there in your life?
All right. So when you understand that all of these things that are truly representative of your core vibration, the things that are representative of the life you say you desire, wish, prefer, would be overjoyed and passionate to live, Now that you know they are banging at your door trying to get in, maybe you will let that door open a crack. And now that you know there are things that are not representative of the vibration of your preference at all, things that are wholly incompatible with your core frequency, that are banging on the inside of the door trying to get out, maybe you will open that door a crack so that what needs to get out can get out and what needs to come in can come in. All you have to do is open the same door. And the things that need to leave will leave. And the things that wish to come in will come in. You will invite them in, and you will invite them to leave. It is as simple as that. They want to be where they need to be. The vibrations that are incompatible with your signature core want to be elsewhere. The vibrations that are compatible with your signature core want to be with you. The reality that they bring with them wants to be with you. The reality that isn't you doesn't want to be with you. It wants to be where it belongs. Let it be where it belongs. Let it go find its home. Let the things that need to find you come home to you. Because they are you. They are your home. They are your frequency.
So just as a quick note to this, when you're at a job or you're in a relationship and you know you've gotten to the point where you know it's at an end. You know that those things are actually, it's time to move on. You can feel it in your core. You can feel it inside of you saying, I'm ready to go. So that's when you see, like a lot of times when you see relationships where where they're just fighting all the time, that's usually the end of the relationship. They've lost trust. They lost the things that actually make a relationship work. They're out of step with each other. Their frequencies no longer match.
Now you can see with this analogy that you are floating around as individuals in a sea of whirlpools and vortices and eddies that are attempting to locate you. And as you allow them to come in, you will allow them to swirl and spiral into you. And as soon as they begin to swirl and spiral in, when you allow those other things to swirl and spiral out, you will make room for those things that belong with you and give freedom to those things that don't, instead of keeping them prisoner in your dungeon of pain and sorrow and suffering. This is why you have the phrase on your planet, misery loves company. You're holding on to all the things that are reflective of those things that don't belong to you and thus then create misery. Because you think that no one else is knocking at the door, when in fact all the things that would be representative of your joy are out there knocking, going, where is he? Where is she? Why does it seem that no one is home? And that is because you have created, by holding on to those that don't belong in your house, you have created such a cacophony of sound, such an overwhelming volume of sound of all of those individuals being so miserable and chatting in your mind and desiring to get out but not being let out and complaining about it, that you can't hear who's knocking at the door. It overwhelms the sound of that which wants to come in. So you need to quiet those noises of the things that don't belong, quiet the chatter, and say, you know what? Party's over. It's time for the new party to begin, the one that is more compatible with my vibration. Time for you all that don't belong here to go find the parties you do belong to. Because you see, all things, as we say, serve double duty. And it is not that many of those things are in and of themselves bad or wrong by any sense. It just seems that way because they don't belong with you. And thus then when you let them find where they belong, they can be transformed into positive energy. And thus then everyone can be having a positive party simultaneously by allowing those components to find the correct houses in which they belong, the correct people to whom they belong.
I know I've heard him say this many times in the past. usually those things that you hold on to, they're really, really heavy. And usually the things that are really heavy like that don't belong to you. And what is it when you actually hold on to things that don't belong to you? You're being a thief. What I've heard him say many times over the years, and I've tried to live by this as much as possible, is don't be a belief thief.
You've mentioned the subject of time this weekend several times. And I want to revisit the question that was asked last night about the concept of frequency and the fact that it is a function of time.
Yes.
And I want to get into some more technical detail about that.
All right.
Now, I've been aware for 30-some-odd years that our experience of physical reality is a sequential focusing of our attention on a sequence of different universes, if I'm understanding correctly. Very much in the way that...
In a sense, yes.
Yeah, in the way that motion picture film is a sequence of still frames.
This is, of course, all still an analogy, but it will do as a representative one with regard to the third-dimensional space-time matrix. Yes.
Okay, and I am speaking specifically of physical reality.
Yes, I know.
And within this context, it would mean that within the idea of an infinitude of different universes and different realities and different dimensions is the idea that when we experience movement, what we are actually experiencing is instantaneous shifts from one physical reality, from one dimension to another one that is very, very close in structure.
Yes.
And going through a whole series of these, just like a series of frames in a motion picture.
Correct.
Gives the illusion of motion.
Yes.
And that motion gives the illusion of time.
Yes.
Because we do it at a very deliberate pace for the most part. Especially when we have a clock that is measuring this. That the movement of a clock really establishes the standard of time.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm correct in my understanding that each of these frames of physical reality is essentially static?
Yes.
Okay. And this gets back to the change and no change idea that we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Everything is change, but there is no change.
Correct.
Okay. So each of these physical realities is static.
Yes.
And now let's bring in the idea of frequency.
Yes.
Frequency is vibrations per unit of time.
Yes.
But time is the illusion of motion, which is a shifting from one dimension to the next. And I'm wondering exactly how frequency relates to that shifting from one dimension.
The frequency that you create in your consciousness when you create the illusion of time is what determines exactly which frames fall into the slot that give you your sense of continuity. Does that make sense?
I didn't totally get it.
No. All right. The ideas that you create in your consciousness, the illusion of time, by creating the concept of frequency.
Yeah.
In doing so, once you have created that, it then determines which of the static sequence of parallel realities you actually experience as your continuity of motion. Because let's just say, again, even though I understand there may be shortcomings in third-dimensional language to express this, let's say you choose to operate on a certain frequency within your consciousness.
Okay.
By establishing that frequency, by setting up that illusion of time and frequency, you might choose every third frame, or every second frame, or every fifth frame as your expression of change in space.
Okay.
So the frequency at which you operate determines exactly how you experience the idea of the continuity of motion.
So, the frame that the personal frequency that you're putting off, typically most people, especially if they're operating in a fear-based belief system or they're operating in more of an unconscious state, operate around 30 30 to 60,000 cycles per second. Typically 60 is on the higher side of things, but the higher you actually operate frequency-wise, you experience less of those negative realities because of that vibration that you're putting off, that frequency that you're attuning to, tells you which version of reality you're going to experience. Do you want the more positive one, or do you want the more negative one? If you buy into more fear-based beliefs or fear-based experiences, that's typically, not always, but typically what leads you down the negative route, where it's you can't do things and the world is falling apart. That's usually what creates those. So when you go back in and you want to know how you're creating your reality, or how your reality is being shaped just based off of what reality experience you want to deal with, it's based off of how willing are you to actually stay with those negative belief systems? How willing are you to stay in that negative experience?
Hello, Bashar.
I know you. Good day.
My heart to yours.
Our heart to yours as well.
You've answered many of the questions I brought here today with so much of your information in the last 2 days.
Thank you for allowing us to reflect what you already know.
There is one area,
yes,
that still is, I'm sure, connected to all of this and the law of attraction.
All right.
And for me specifically around income generation here.
Abundance.
Abundance issues, yes.
And you know our definition of abundance, yes?
That which excites me most.
The ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it.
Yes.
Period.
Period.
No matter in what form it comes.
I am sometimes, as of late, less sure of that I'm doing what I need to do when I need to do it, perhaps.
Are you acting to the best of your ability on your highest excitement every moment that you can with no expectation whatsoever?
Not always. There are expectations at times, yes.
All right. Now, this is different from the idea of expectancy as a vibration of recognizing that certainly there must be consequences to certain choices. We're not talking about the mechanical recognition that certain things result from certain things that are set in motion. We're talking about the idea of expectancy or expectation as an insistence that things must appear in the way you imagine they must in order for it to have the same meaning that you wish to give it, instead of allowing the higher mind to bring it to you in whatever form actually works best for you, and knowing that if you do that, the higher mind may actually provide you with a manifestation that is even greater than you were capable of imagining. That's why it is important to drop the expectation, because the expectation may actually limit the ability of the higher mind to bring you what it could by your insistence that it should only come in a certain fashion. You see, the visualization that is generated from your physical mind is only there to function as a symbol of the idea, and it's there for the purpose of generating the energy of excitement that that idea represents. The energy being the most important thing that will allow the higher mind to then use that energy to bring you the physical manifestation that may actually look different than you imagined it, but which will be the physical manifestation that actually represents the energy generated by the symbol of the visualization that the physical mind was capable of generating. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, it may be possible sometimes that the manifestation will seem to match the visualization image that the physical mind conjured up, but that can be misleading because it may lead you to think that it always must match. And in fact, it very rarely matches that idea. So the idea is to open up and allow the higher mind to actually show you what the real manifestation needs to be that is representative of that true core vibration that is generated by that visualization image. But you must remember that the physical mind doesn't know how things are going to happen. It's not designed to know how things are going to happen. Only the higher mind knows how things are going to happen. The physical mind only knows how things are happening. It's only designed to perceive what has been received by the higher mind. It cannot generate, in that sense, the conceptual idea of how that's going to come about. So it just needs to receive by setting up the energy frequency by using this symbolic visualization. It sets up the receiver point. And thus then the higher mind goes, ah, you have created a space for what I now can send you. And thus it will send it. But if there is too much condition placed on that receiver point, too much insistence and limitation placed on how exactly the manifestation should occur, then you actually diminish the energy of the receiver point and make it much, much more difficult for a higher mind to give you something so big that it will now no longer fit in the receiver point that you have shrunk. Higher mind goes, sorry, can't send it to you. Your receiver point's not big enough because you're putting too many conditions on what should manifest at that receiver point. Make sense?
Yes. Sounds like I just need to let go of a lot of things.
Yes.
Step into the unknown and...
Yes, the unknown is your friend. Remember, the only thing you will ever discover in the unknown is more of you. That's the only thing that exists in the unknown. There is nothing else. You understand?
Yes.
Does that help?
Yes, it does.
So keep this in mind. It's the insistence where most people get in trouble with how they're experiencing the reality, as well as insisting that life has to show up a specific way. I think he says, I've heard him say it many times in the past, but this is kind of the core of it. It's great to have an outline, a nice loose outline that you can kind of shift. Most people, from what I've seen, they tend to say life has to show up this way. I've done it. I think we've all done it. But if you allow there to be wiggle room, if you allow there to be space for life to change and grow and morph in the way it needs to, usually fun synchronicities start showing up, and it gives you more than what you thought it would be. Like for me, I love doing this. I had an idea, I had a question, and this is what I'm creating now.
To work in the clearest possible way, in the most aligned way with who you truly are, by clearing out the belief systems and the definitions that have nothing to do with you. The things you have inherited, the things you have had handed down to you, the things that come from other people that are not you. This is this, right now, this idea of this structure. In understanding how beliefs are structured and thus then how they color your utilization or your ability to recognize the utilization of these mechanisms. Positive beliefs, as you may observe on the diagram, are by definition, in a sense, expansive. You have a positive belief. All beliefs, even positive beliefs, have a mechanism within them that are self-reinforcing, self-perpetuating. They have to, by definition. Otherwise, if they didn't, because beliefs really are ephemeral, if they didn't have a self-reinforcing component, you would not be able to actually have a sustained, perpetuated experiential reality in that belief. You would not be able to see the manifestation of that belief if they didn't constantly perpetuate themselves, because they are constantly being chosen. Second to second to second to second to second to second to second. It may seem as if, it may appear as if, in the illusion of space-time, in the illusion you create of continuity in space-time, it may seem as if once you have chosen a belief and it perpetuates itself, it may seem as if it is the exact same belief just rolling along and rolling along and rolling along. But that's not exactly what's happening. The idea of the perpetuation of the belief, the idea of the inertia and the momentum, is simply that the perpetuation mechanism is designed in such a way as to inspire you, shall we say, to continue to choose the same belief again in the next moment. Because in the next moment, it is a whole new reality. You actually have to keep choosing the belief every single nanosecond in order to actually have an experience of ongoing perpetuation. So the idea of the self-perpetuating mechanism in a belief is not that it simply has an automatic momentum that carries it through space-time. It is that it has an automatic perpetuation mechanism that seems to make it, that makes it seem like the thing to keep choosing over and over and over and over and over again. Because as you do that, you are actually creating a new reality, new reality, new reality, new reality, new reality. But if you are, in a sense, buying into the perpetuation mechanism of that belief, positive or negative, then what you're doing is creating a completely new reality every moment that looks very much like the reality you created a moment ago. And as you keep creating similar realities, you thus create the illusion of continuity, that it is the same reality and only changing slightly, instead of understanding that it is a completely different reality that has changed completely, except you are making it seem as if it hasn't by simply allowing yourself to buy into the rationale of the perpetuation mechanism that says that that belief must be recreated again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Now, when it is a positive belief, obviously this is representative of alignment with your true natural core self, and you don't mind that it is, in a sense, inspiring you to recreate it again and again and again and again. But where you have your difficulty is when you don't understand why you are recreating the negative beliefs that you say you don't prefer again and again and again and again.
So something I've heard him say many, many times, and this goes back to frequency and also goes back to your negative beliefs, your positive beliefs, and the energy that you put out into the world. You've been supported in your negative beliefs for so long by God or all that is. Why, if he's willing to support you in your negative beliefs, why wouldn't he also support you in your positive beliefs? The reality you want to be in, or you choose that energy that you believe serves you best? Because it's very simple, the actual motivational mechanism that most people go through, which is you do what you believe serves you, and you move away from things that you believe are not serving you. It's really simple. Like, keep it very simple, the actual, like, the way you think about this stuff. It's based on very simple principles. Life and reality and the universe is very complex, but it's all based on very simple principles. It has to be based on very simple principles, or else it couldn't support itself.
Thus then, with the tipping of the scales to allow for slightly more positive energy collectively to exist on your planet after that date, you can use that energy to accelerate, as you say, to snowball the effect of positive energy, both collectively and individually, as you accelerate your shift from parallel reality to parallel reality. Designing, in a sense, within your relationship to higher mind, designing the reality that you prefer and shifting to the reality that already exists, that is more reflective and more representative of the reality, of the parallel Earth reality that you say you prefer, that you say you wish to align to. And remembering that the idea is not just the notion of a wish. It is not just the notion of a visualization. It is also the notion of action, of behavior, of behaving like the person you wish to be in the reality you wish to experience, so that you can ground all these energies like a circuit into the experience of physical reality. For if you continue to the idea of contrary behavior to the visualization of the version of yourself in that reality, it will not anchor that vibration in your experience, and you will not shift to that particular parallel reality. It is all about forming a cohesive whole in thought, word, and deed.
So this is very simple principles. What you believe to be true, you do. So the energy that you put out into the world is based off the actions that you take to actually create the reality that you want, to create the shift to the reality that you want to be in. So if you want to receive a reality, you actually have to take steps, which physical reality, the language of physical reality is physical actions. So if you're not liking the reality that you're in, you need to take steps to actually approach the reality by taking the action to be able to be in the correct reality that you would like to be in.
Thus then, of all these notions that have been shared with you this day, are things that we have been speaking of now for quite some time to the people of your planet. and will continue to do so in this way until such time as it is determined that you have said you are collectively ready to interact in different ways, to raise your vibrations up in different ways so as to create a new reality in which many of the things you say you prefer can actually come to pass, can actually manifest physically, can actually come to light, and that you can experience these things that you desire to experience on a day-to-day basis in physical reality, even though it will not be exactly the same physical reality you are experiencing now because of its vibrational difference. As has been often said, you are shifting your frequencies from one reality level to another, and this is so. But you are always shifting. You are shifting now. It is a natural thing that you do. You don't have to wait to shift. You've been shifting. You've been shifting all your lives. This is the way motion is created. This is what happens when you create the illusion of movement. The only way to create the illusion of movement is to actually shift from parallel reality to parallel reality that's slightly different than the reality you were in before. So you're shifting now, you're shifting now, you're shifting now, you're shifting now, you're shifting now. Through constantly shifting parallel realities. The idea is that you don't notice this so much because each new reality you shift to is very similar to the one you were existing in before. The idea of noticing the change is to create there to be a bigger difference between the parallel reality you shift to and the one that you were in before. That's when you know you're shifting. That's when you reveal to yourselves that you're always constantly shifting, and that learning to shift is not something you have to do. You do it automatically. You do it by your own second nature. It is natural to you to shift. This is the nature of how reality works. This is the nature of how change exists. So the question is not, can you shift? The question is, what will you shift to? And how different will you allow the shift to be based on your definitions and your belief systems of what you believe is possible for you? And this is why it is of paramount importance, as has been said this day, for you to really focus on the idea of the frequency, the vibrational frequency, the state of being that you prefer your reality to be, and thus then understand, based on what we have just said about shifting to parallel Earth realities, that when you change the vibration of your being, it's not that you change the world. It's that you take yourself, you shift yourself to a parallel Earth already existing on the vibratory level you have created within yourself. So it's not about having to force anyone else to change. It's only about you changing and taking yourself to whatever reality, whatever parallel Earth is representative of the vibrational frequency you have created within your own state of being. And thus then find yourself surrounded by other beings who already populate that world, but are already more representative of the vibrational frequency you have created yourself to shift to. Is this making some sense to you? All right. The idea here, again, is that this is simple physics. As many of your scientists are beginning to realize, everything exists all at once, all now, in a sense, all here. But you create the illusion of separation by creating differences in vibrational frequency. As each and every one of you goes to your homes this day of your time, after these interactions, many of you may sit down on one of your couches, you may pick up one of your remotes, you may turn on one of your television sets, and your TV set technology is a perfect analogy of what we are talking about. The idea is that you know that at any given moment, there are any number of dozens of television programs that are available to you at that moment that all coexist simultaneously. But you will only get the program that you tune your channel to. This is exactly how physical reality is holographically structured. Whatever vibrational realm you exist on, whatever state of vibrational being you choose to be, is the reality you get. What you put out is what you get back. Simple physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Simple physics. That's all this is. It's about creating the appropriate state that you prefer in your own being and allowing reality, in a sense, to reflect back to you the shift you have made in yourself. But you must understand that the opposite is also true. You cannot perceive what you are not the vibration of. If you tune your television set, to use this analogy further, to what you call your channel 2, you will not receive the program on channel 4. You have to tune your set to channel 4 to get that program. Likewise, based on the reality you say you prefer, if you do not allow yourself in your definitions, in your emotions, in your thoughts and actions and behaviors in life to exemplify the vibratory reality that you say you prefer to live in, then you will not be actually capable of perceiving any opportunities that could actually allow you to synchronistically get yourself, shift yourself to that reality. Remember, what you are not the vibration of remains invisible to you. Many times individuals wonder, why can't I do this? Why can't I get there? Why doesn't this happen? It may simply be an issue of that they are on a frequency, operating in a frequency domain that creates certain opportunities to remain invisible to them, unknowable to them, unimaginable to them. They will never even conceive of those ideas, nor recognize them even if they were right in front of their face, because they're not operating on that level. You have to be in the state to see the opportunities and the doorways that actually lead to that reality. This is, again, simple physics. It is a very, very, very simple concept, a very fundamental concept, but we understand that many people on your planet seem to have a lot of difficulty in relating to this idea and creating the kind of changes within themselves that they say they want to make.
So the next thing outside of action that you actually need to kind of take into account is the words that you say, the words that you project out into the world, the way you interact with the world, the way the words you speak have power. They carry a frequency to them. Whether you say you're swearing at someone or you're sitting there praising someone, they all represent a frequency that is carried through your actions and your words and your deeds into the world. What you say and do affect the people that you come in contact with. In moments when you're actually able to recognize that, you can effectively change the reality that you're pushing yourself into by the frequency that you're operating at.
This all simply comes down to the notion of definitions, how you define your reality. Belief systems, basically, is what we are talking about. Because you cannot have an actual experiential reality except as is based upon the strongest thing you believe it can be. The strongest way you define your relationship to it and to yourself. All experiences in life are based upon, in your physical reality, in your physical dimension, all experiences are based upon the strongest definition you have bought into about that reality. There have been many, many discussions about the different kinds of realities that your probable futures may hold. And I say this, as has been said, they are simply probable futures. Nothing is set in stone, nothing is chiseled in steel. You have the wherewithal to understand that these are simply a function of the probabilities, that there is no the future. There are many, many, many possible futures. The idea, as we have just explained it, is whatever vibratory realm you exist in, whatever state of being you decide is true for you, will be, generally speaking, the future, so to speak, you will experience. And even if there are other people who think completely oppositely, who believe completely opposite of you, they will have their reality experience as well. The idea, again, is that you don't have to change your world. You simply need to shift to a world that's already representative of the change you wish to experience and allow those that wish to remain in the vibrational world that they have been in to remain there, because that earth will exist as well and does exist right now. All these parallel realities exist right now at the same time, just like the television programs. So, to further stretch the analogy, what this all comes down to by using the analogy of your TV program is to understand it all comes down to transformational vibration, TV. All right? That's what you're dealing with, transformational vibrations, TV. You decide what TV show you're going to experience.
So after your words and your deeds, the other thing to pay attention to frequency-wise and information-wise that you're bringing into your reality is actually the information that you absorb through media sources or the people that you're around. The old saying that you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time around it's completely true. If you roll it back to a point of just looking at everything on a spectrum, the people, the places, the things, whether it's information that you agree with or disagree with, you'll create a stronger connection to that reality specifically that matches the vibration of that information or matches the vibration of the people that you surround yourself with. Because you will match the frequency of those things the more time and energy you put into it. Energy and motion, emotion, and that also gives you an understanding of your emotional guidance system that allows you to actually what track are you on, what reality are you shifting to. It's that.
But you have to tune to that channel or you will not be capable of seeing that particular TV show you say you desire to see. Does this make sense? All right. Simple physics. That's all this is. Nothing has to be complicated about this unless, of course, you prefer it to be difficult and complicated, because I will never take that away from you if that's what you want to do. It is up to you to experience the idea of difficulty if you wish to, because that's a valid choice within creation. The idea, however, is you can understand that you don't have to invalidate difficulty as a choice in order to prefer the idea of smooth and easy transitions. Now, we are not saying you will not have challenges, but we are talking about the idea that those challenges can always be met from a positive and constructive vibrational state, and if they are met from that state, then any circumstance and any situation that occurs in your physical reality will always only result ultimately in a positive and constructive effect in your life, regardless. Here's the important point. Regardless of anyone else's intention toward you. That's the important point. You cannot be affected in your reality without your permission, without your agreement. So the idea is to get in touch with what you believe is true, what you define as possible, so that you will understand what it is you can and thus don't have to agree to experience in your chosen reality, because it's all by agreement. It's all by permission.
Understanding truth, all the things you say do actually have frequency, then they have weight. It's understanding the information that's coming to you and understanding the reality that you're picking based off that information. It's simple. I mean, it's really, really simple. Like, you can choose your own reality based off of what you want. But realistically speaking, it's better to keep the reality simple, or the things you want simple, versus like complex and over the top. Conspiracy theories are kind of fun for the purposes of entertainment, but ultimately if the information you're receiving is not true to you, you can feel it here. You know if something's not correct or real in your reality or what's true to you.
And also along the lines of our evolution and the idea of disclosure and conspiracy theories. I can see that our species is going through challenges in discerning what is true and what is not true. And often certain theories will come along that have a grain of truth to them, but not necessarily the entire truth. Can you help us understand how to respond to this, how to improve our reception of this information and make positive choices for the earth that we want to experience?
As we have said, there are many parallel realities that coexist, many different versions of Earth. You could say it's not even an issue of discerning the truth, but recognizing that there are positive truths that are constructive, and there are negative truths that are destructive. Again, going with the energy of positive being collective and negative being segregative and separative and dissociative. So it's up to each of you to determine for yourselves what works best for yourself and how to navigate yourself to the version of Earth that is either more in alignment with positive, collective, associative truths or negative, dissociative truths in that sense. Because all truths are true. All realities are real. And it's a matter of following the formula and staying in the vibration of your preference that is most aligned with your core vibration, your essential self, and going in the flow of the positive direction if that is what you so desire. unless you have made an agreement to choose the idea of the negative direction for your soul's growth in experiencing those negative challenges. But again, you will wind up on the version of Earth, ultimately, that is reflective of the vibration that you are giving off, that you have chosen based on your belief systems.
Okay, so it's always that responsibility of making sure that you're making choices that are aligned with your higher self, in a sense.
Yes, if that is the direction you prefer.
Sure. Because we always have a choice, because we
Yes,
have free
you do.
will.
Always. Now, some choices can make it seem as if your choices are limited because, again, certain negative choices, mechanically negative, will in some sense then create scenarios and experiences that may make it seem difficult to choose otherwise. Just as there is a momentum to choosing positive things that will make it actually more challenging to choose the negative scenarios in the future once you become used to that particular pathway. So each of the choices can create a momentum and an inertia that may make it seem ultimately more challenging to choose the opposite. Even though you always have a choice, you can create a scenario in which it seems as if you do not.
So it's kind of like we can trick ourselves into thinking that something negative is positive.
Yes.
And then the end result of that is that we will find greater and greater limitation in terms of our choices.
Yes.
Is, in a sense, could you say that if you are choosing something that makes you feel disempowered, angry, upset, frightened, those kinds of information, that is probably an indication that it's not working in your benefit to work with that?
It depends on what you mean by benefit. Again, some spirits choose to go through negative scenarios for their soul's growth because they get benefits from that in another way, on another level later on, you would say. But in general, your question is correct. The idea in general is that if you feel those things, you are most likely choosing to buy into negative belief systems.
Because there's never a reason to feel disempowered in the sense that we are our governments. We are the things that we're manifesting, I suppose, in terms of what we might perceive as controlling us.
Yes, yes. But again, remember, that's a negative point of view.
That things are controlling us.
Yes, you are always in control. It's just that you can be using your control to make it seem as if you are being controlled by others.
So that's your first indication.
Yes.
You feel like you're being controlled by something outside yourself.
You are most likely falling into a negative belief system and choosing to perpetuate that idea for some reason or another. Again, it goes back to the motivational mechanism of what beliefs you choose, you only choose because in some way, shape, or form, you have a belief that it benefits you, even if it doesn't.
Okay, thank you.
So remembering that you have a choice, remembering that you can always choose positive over negative, that momentum will carry you into the realities and will help you choose the frequencies that are more positive. The people that don't match those frequencies that you experience in your life, in the reality, those experiences, whether it be a job, relationships, life has to match the frequency that you're putting out. So remembering, this is a very empowering statement, you create your own reality by the frequency that you're putting out into the world. You can connect to other people, places, things, just based off of your frequency. One of the things that I know that does actually unlock the higher you are able to get your frequency up is the ability to perceive more of what's already around you. So I will never take away someone's right to choose, but I will also always remind everyone, you have a right to choose your reality and your experiences. What you want to have in your life is your choice. And if you can't allow someone else to have their own opinion or their own belief system, you don't really believe in what you say you believe, because that's coming usually from a very negative place if you can't allow someone else to have their own experiences. But in conclusion, everything around you is frequency. The way you perceive, what you hear, what you feel, it's all frequency, and it's all in fun states. But I just wanted to share this message with you today. Have a great day.